Nancy Norden. I am the founder of Smart Selling Tools, which is a media site for sales operations, sales enablement, sales leaders to keep up to date and learn about sales technology to help drive revenue.
Alex Gorbanski, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Docurated. We're an enterprise sales content management platform.
I'm Paul Bickford, Sales Training and Enablement Manager for Epicor Software.
And I'm Gerhard Schwant. I'm a founding member of the Sales Enablement Society. I want to welcome all the people in the audience. Paul, why don't you relate a little bit how you have come to the conclusion that there is a gap between sales enablement managers and vendors?
A few things. So one is just with all the marketing that a lot of the technology vendors do is they push an agenda, and I get it. I would have a lot of confusion in the space of defining sales enablement. It's really made it a challenge for practitioners like myself because all of this marketing is telling people that sales enablement, the entirety of it is a technology platform to manage marketing content. And that sort of thing I kind of find frustrating. So that's a disconnect. And then I think the other thing, which I think resonates a lot of times across sales in general, is where customers, or I should say vendors, and we have people I'm sure that are guilty of it, certainly, make it all about engaging a customer and leaping right into the features and functionality of their product and what it does versus trying to learn about the customer, learn about the function, because I think some of these, or many of these vendors are asserting that their product is all sales enablement does because they really believe that they're not. I don't think they're trying to be charlatans per se. There may be some what I call false prophets out there, but I think they want to understand, or they need to understand if they want to sell more and be more meaningful in their engagement with us, to understand all that goes into sales enablement and taking the time to understand those other elements and how that piece that they contribute fits in and supplements.
Let me quickly summarize my understanding of what you're saying. You seem to suggest that sales enablement vendors have only a fractional understanding of the whole pie, what sales enablement represents. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So, Alex, it seems to me that vendors look at sales enablement from a different perspective. A lot of vendors want to pitch tactical solutions, and obviously, what needs to be done is to have a more strategic alignment. Alex, how could that happen? How can that happen?
Part of the challenge right now is there are a lot of vendors. There's a lot of noise in the market. Our focus is really putting the customer first and foremost, and really the approach that we take is one of a long-term partnership and really of being a strategic advisor to our customers. So our first job is really to understand what are the outcomes that a company wants to drive. So if you're Epicor or another one of our clients, what are the key outcomes you're looking to achieve? How does your sales enablement function fit into those? Because I think as Paul alluded, sales enablement may actually be different things in different companies. Some companies do look at it as purely content management. In others, it's much more broader. It's learning, it's coaching. And in most cases, a single vendor cannot address all of the issues. So our job early on is to build a partnership with a customer. We actually understand their full requirements, what outcomes they want to drive, and only then do we actually talk about our technology and how it fits in. And one thing I've found is that's a very effective strategy, because a lot of times these projects take several years to actually build momentum and actualize. So if you build a good relationship with someone, 1 or 2 years ago, 1 or 2 years before, there's a really good chance you will engage them in the future.
Nancy, tell us your perspective. What is the market look like for sales enablement vendors right now? How many are there? And what are the different ways of vendors approaching sales enablement managers?
Yeah, well, as Alex said a minute ago, it is a crowded space. We came out with the sales tech landscape for 2017 recently, and there are close to 500 different technologies in somewhere like 40 odd categories of tools. And categorization is one of the reasons why we have a disconnect, I think, between vendors and end users. It's interesting, we have an end user and if you will, Paul, a practitioner and a vendor on the call today, and I work with both of them. And, part of the problem is, look, we have to know as a vendor, who are we calling on? Are we calling on a sales enablement leader? Are we calling on a sales ops leader? Are we calling on a frontline sales manager? We're going to have different messaging and different, discussions with each of those. And yet, even let's say you're going in and talking to a sales ops person in one company, they may be responsible for the same things that a sales enablement leader at a different company is responsible for. So it's tough from that perspective. Vendors have to categorize themselves because it's how someone can quickly realize kind of what they do. So, we say we're a sales enablement provider. Well, what does that do? It depends on what product we have. Might be just about content, might be about training, it might be about sales engagement, it might be about all kinds of things.
You're an expert in the industry and you're technology savvy. So when you look at a stack of 500 sales enablement solutions and you need to sort them into 40 categories, how easy is it to do that?
How easy it is to do it well is the tough part. I would not call them all sales enablement solutions. That's part of the problem. They're sales transformation solutions or sales technology solutions. And we did it based on our revenue hierarchy. So we said, what do you need to do to figure out how to sell more in less time for the best price with hopefully fewer salespeople? Well, the most important fundamental thing in the hierarchy, just like Maslow's, is we need to make sure we're calling on the right people and that we know how to reach those people. That's the most fundamental level. The next level up is how do we get them to actually engage with us, because it's hard to get a prospect to engage. After that, what is the value? How can we more readily communicate why they should be buying our solution amongst a number of buying influencers on the team? And then how do you get them to close? And then the self-actualization, if you will, is how do you repeat that whole process? So that's how we segmented the landscape. If you are having difficulties at the most fundamental level, then these are the technologies you want to check out. It's interesting because a vast majority, more than half of the landscape, is made up of solutions solving those first two fundamental problems. So we have about 4 problems and technologies that are just part of that landscape. We're seeing the whole market shift now to further down the funnel.
Paul, share your perspective on how easy it is to make sense of that technology landscape.
It's tough. I get calls, from salespeople all the time. And then there's some things I try to look into on my own, and it's really like drinking from a fire hose. And so it's difficult. It really is to see, where the value is and if there's value, because the other part is there's just not a whole lot of time to go really deep with all of these different people. And so it'd be great if there was like a Yelp for sales technology of people to say, we've used this, it works, or we're really simple. Less is more, put on a diet, bullet to bullet of these technologies do these things. These are the biggest 3 vendors in the space. Here's where they play well. Here's where they differ. Just something that's digestible, right? Something that's consumable, as people have so many things day to day to stand out. And it's tough. I definitely don't have the answer, but those are just some thoughts.
Those are very, very good ideas. Alex, back to you. You said earlier that you want to make the sales enablement manager the hero. You want to create that trusted advisor relationship. What are your challenges for achieving that goal?
Well, it's tough goals. So number one, I think the enablement function is often very new, and in a lot of organizations, the enablement function is really stretched very thin. So maybe 1 or 2 enablement people that are supporting 500, 1,000 salespeople. So one of the big challenges for enablement is, how do you have the resources and how do you organize yourself in a way where you're not just doing very tactical day-to-day things like responding to, the field coming in and asking us, hey, give us this data sheet or give us this piece of content, but how do you actually think about strategically of getting operational leverage and programs for driving productivity? So I think one of the challenges for enablement is how do you actually get mind share from these folks? Because, folks like Paul and many others that we work with on a regular basis, are really, really stretched thin. So one of the things we try to do to solve that is actually not lead with technology, but really come in and lead with strategy and assessments. So doing sales enablement assessments of an organization. So how developed is your function? What are the gaps? And sort of a diagnostic, if you will. Number two, in our business specifically, is helping people run an audit of their existing content and collateral. So the idea is you do that, you want to give enablement a set of data and knowledge and information that they can then deliver back to the organization that will empower them to actually launch new projects, launch new initiatives. Because today, a lot of what's missing is there's a lot of hearsay, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z program, or we need to do this other program because that's the issue. And I think there's a big opportunity for the sales enablement function to sort of be the epicenter of that knowledge and that data to really determine how do we drive sales efficiency, how do we drive sales effectiveness.
Nancy, when you look at the technology vendor landscape, what challenges do they discuss with you that are similar to what Alex is saying?
How do you get attention? Because they want Paul's attention, they wanted the attention of Paul's colleagues, and they feel passionate about what they have to offer, but they know that, first of all, Paul might not be the decision maker for what they are particularly selling. And second, as Alex said, Paul's got a lot of things that he's working on and doing, and what is his priority at the moment might be something totally different than someone else's priority in his situation. So it's really hard for vendors. And I would just ask people to keep that in mind and maybe help them help you, because they really, they don't want to just push well, some of them do, but most of them don't, right? They don't want to just push products. They want to find good value customers that they can have long-term relationships with. That's what the SaaS market's based on. Maybe put together some documents that says, look, these are the things that are the highest priority for us right now. And if you can help us with any of those, then we're happy to talk with you. If not, then it's just not the right time. That might be one approach.
Paul, you said earlier that you are involved in an RFP right now. Can you walk us through the process that you have to go through to get internal approval and get consensus for that idea? How does that process work?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that. And I wanted to respond to Nancy as well with what she just talked about. So one thing that's really key, right, is figuring out who the decision makers are, because like in this case for our RFP, I'm a sponsor, and I guess I'm not the champion because I can't write the check, but I'm kind of somewhere in the middle because I'm on the committee of people that makes the decision of who we go with. And I was just presenting at an American Association of Inside Sales Professionals meeting 2 days ago and talking about value propositions and presenting value. And one of the people there said they were surprised how many times vendors reached out to them and found out that they didn't make the decision, or even more so than that, actually, that the timing wasn't right, that they're like, we just can't do it yet. And how often they just kind of blew her off and just kind of dropped it versus saying, hey, when can we follow up? Or why is this of interest? Or why are you waiting? What else is going on? And I was just amazed at that. So making sure that you engage equally the sponsor, if you will, from the solution selling model is an example, right? That can get you to the champion to drive decisions. And so kind of embracing both of those. But for me, what are we trying to accomplish as an organization? What are the objectives? What do we want people doing and saying to move the needle with where we're lacking, whether it's profits, sales, product category, whatever? Then we get into what capabilities do we need to help people do what we want them to do. So for example, we need people to be able to find content quickly so they can spend more time talking to customers, looking for customers, and not be distracted by taking too much time on the preparation side and also subjectively trying to decide, is this better than that, right? And so we say, okay, there are platforms that address that. So we list out all the capabilities based on what the objectives are of what we want people doing, performance objectives. And then it's about seeing who all should be involved in coming up with that criteria. Those same people would be involved in the decision. And then research the usual suspects, research the players, and then based on independent research, then reach out to those players have them kind of give us, I always say, tell me about it, what you do. I'm hoping first they understand what we do, right? That's always a test to me is, are you coming in, finding out about us on that first call? And then the next piece is now show me. So you've told me, now show me, and set up some demos. And so you want to make sure as you're making the decision that you have objective data to make that decision from.
Thank you. Alex, what kind of feedback do you get from your sales team? Do they buy into that, or do they get anxious in the process and feel like they're being held back from being aggressive?
It's a great question, Gerhard. So we really want to make sure that we select salespeople that have experience working in a young market that can really take a much more consultative approach. And what I tell my salespeople is, listen, your job is to guide the customer in the evaluation. It's to give them all of the information they need to have to make a good decision. Look, preferably, it's obviously to do business with us. That's not always going to be the case. There are going to be certain capabilities that people want that aren't necessarily aligned with our strength. And in that situation, we have to have the discipline and the respect for the client to walk away, or be transparent and tell them, hey, we actually don't do this. We don't know how important that is, but we want to be really, really clear. And I'll tell you what, people love that. You'd be, just involved in another situation where, customer, there's a lot of capabilities people want. The question is always, what's important? When do you need it? And we said, hey, there's a certain capability we really don't have today. We may have it in the future, we may not. And the customer really respected it, because a lot of times what vendors will say is, hey, we do everything. But as we know, that's not always true. So rule number one is, our job is to guide and help you in the evaluation. And it's ultimately the customer's decision.
Nancy, can you share some examples without mentioning any names of sales enablement vendors where you know that they're more transactional than strategic and more aggressive than patient?
Well, one comes to mind immediately, but I won't share any names. I think what's important is for sales reps of any sales technology to realize that every single company that you could sell to needs your product. They just might not need it right now. And that means you don't want to burn any bridges. You're not calling just to say, hey, can we sell you something now? No? Okay, well then you're not a prospect. That's not the case. It is a long-term sell. And it is a matter of priorities. And your job as a salesperson is to help the prospect understand why it should be more of a priority. I bet, Paul, that you'd probably be open to it if you said, hey, this is not really the right time because we've got all these other things going on. And they said, I totally get it, but have you thought of this? And they had something really good to say, you might actually be open to that.
Paul, back to you. Can you give us one or two experiences that you have had with vendors where you scratched your head and say, where did you learn about sales enablement, or where did you learn their selling skills?
Yeah, I'll give you one that was very recent, where we had set up a call as part of our RFP that we're doing now with people like Alex, and said, there'd already been one call, and it was, this is exactly the kind of thing we need. If you could show us how you can, work these capabilities and tie in. They were mentioning how they tied in really well with Salesforce, and so it's like, okay, well, be prepared to tell us all this. So we went through a call that was an hour, and we were instant messaging. My peers and I were instant messaging each other internally, saying, why are they talking about this? When are they going to get to the things we've asked from them? And they got done and said, okay, do you have any questions? And, diplomatic but direct enough to say, yeah, we'd ask for you to show us how to conduct these capabilities, because that's what we're looking for. And we didn't get any of that. And they said, oh, well, we didn't know that was what you wanted. And they go, yeah, we're not sure if we do those or not. And yeah, looking at those, I don't know. I don't think we do those things. And it's like, well, so to me, that means, did they read the email? And then I'm going, how do we even get hooked up with these guys? They had everybody's attention. All the decision makers were on the call, right? It's a salesperson's dream, and they didn't even address the issues.
Alex, when you listen to that story, what do you do as a sales leader and a business leader to avoid fumbles on your sales team?
I think a lot of it is, coaching and training repeatedly. I think Nancy said something really, really important. This is something I stress everyone in our sales organization. We're in the sort of first or second inning of this market. This is very, very early. Companies are setting out their strategies. This is not a transactional play. A lot of our best customers we met, maybe several years before they actually became our customers. So we really train people and say, hey, view this as a long-term opportunity. Do not burn bridges. Try to establish value and deliver value through every interaction.
To wrap this up, I'd like to go around the table and ask everyone to share one significant idea that we discussed in this meeting that you want to translate into advice for either vendor salespeople or sales enablement managers so that it will become easier to buy and easier to sell.
I guess for me, it's just prove you can do just the things we've asked for versus show up and throw up and try to cover everything.
I created a report, a document that is actually a guide, and it's designed to do what Paul was talking about, which is to step back and say, what are our challenges? So there's lots of checklists to figure out, well, where do we need help along that hierarchy? So go through the checklist and figure out what's our priority as a team. Get everybody together and then say, okay, now if this is our priority, where are we today in terms of maturity of technology? If we're down here at a white belt level and that's where our problem is, then we probably want to look at technologies at the blue belt level. If we're already at the blue belt level, then we want to look at brown belt or purple belt or black belt. And so we offer like examples of different solution providers that fit into each of those levels of maturity and that fit into each of those types of challenge areas. So we tried to really boil it down and make a very practical guide to say, hold on, stop everything. Let's just step back and think this through in a very logical way.
Thank you, Nancy. And Alex, what's your take on this? Same question.
I think that sales enablement leaders can really look to the IT function as a really good, potential guideline for what they can do. And if you look at IT is really inundated with many different technologies, many different platforms. And they've developed a pretty good way of dealing with that. So I think first and foremost is do more pilots of technologies. I think having demos and calls and meetings and doing RFPs is really helpful. But at the end of the day, you got to see how the thing works in a real environment and get users' feedback. And I think sales enablement leaders can really de-risk a lot of their purchases and also accelerate a lot of decisions by running POCs, by running pilots, and actually seeing how technology works in production.
I want to add what Paul said earlier. I think you had a terrific idea, which is let's create Yelp for sales enablement vendors. So if the Sales Enablement Society could create that, that would be really terrific and would save a lot of time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Gerhard.
Thanks, Gerhard.
Thanks, Gerhard. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Nancy. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.